This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, fantasy book fans? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast, along with my lifelong friends, Jake, Josh, and Ryan. We're missing Ben. It looks like it's kind of hard to get all five of us together for one episode, but that's, I guess, understandable. But we are going to be doing a monthly episode talking about our top 3 fantasy books for new readers or like intro into fantasy. What would we recommend for someone that's got kind of a lower learning curve, something that someone could just dive right into? And then this is going to kick off a Twitter bracket competition where all of you, our fans, can enter your picks, and then we'll do some voting and see what the ultimate winner is. So, guys, sound okay? Did I intro that all right?
Yeah, I think it's just hard to get Ben on any podcast recently.
Law
He
school.
doesn't yearn. He doesn't yearn for it.
He's all about logic now. He doesn't let the fantasy side of his mind free anymore. He doesn't dream anymore.
You know, I could see Ben like doing, who was it, like Grissom or something, that like was a lawyer, like a military lawyer, and then he wrote all those like lawyer books. Am I thinking, is that the one I'm thinking of? I don't know, maybe I'm making that up. But I could see Ben like writing this like law books in like some high fantasy setting. I think he would do a good job when he's a lawyer.
He did enjoy
lawyer.
Yeah.
Him and I interviewed Richard Swan, who's the author of The Justice of Kings. I think that's the name of the book. It came out last year, but the main character is like a justice, like a lawyer essentially. So Ben really connected with it. And the author, I believe, was also, if I'm remembering this right, is also had some law background. So yeah, maybe that's Ben's future right there.
This man is Ben's hero.
I feel like a lot of authors come from interesting backgrounds. That is one side benefit, I think, to like it being difficult to actually make a living as an author. You have to have some other profession as your primary source of income until you can break into like actually your works can be more successful.
That's the same though with a lot of artistic things. Like there's a lot of actors that also have like waiting tables, but even more than that, like a lot of visual artists also just do it part-time, and
I think you could say that
musicians
for even like outside of art, like side projects like startups and things like that. Like a lot of those have, you have to have a main source of income first, and then you like until that can swap over.
Yeah.
I will say though, if that's Ben's goal, it's good he's focusing on law, but he can't neglect this side of it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
I don't think that's Ben's goal. That's not Ben's goal, but we need to like make it his goal.
That's our goal for him.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to make his goal. I just hope we can utilize his law school degree for fantasy law somehow.
Yeah,
maybe he can go be on the writing
fantasy
team of the
law.
next She-Hulk season, so that the law episodes aren't like all complete trash.
Ben will be like the dad in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or no, it's Charlie in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's like, I'm an expert in bird law. Ben will be like, I'm an expert in high fantasy law.
Yeah. Roshar, he's like, I can go toe to toe with any. Oh dang it! What's the name of the like religious law people?
Voren, the
Ardents. Yeah, I can go toe to toe with any Ardent. Yeah. All right.
He specializes
Nobody's
in
interested in this.
chicken law.
Okay.
All right,
Roshar
so
deep
we've
cut.
determined here, Roshar deep cut. We've determined that it's impossible to do anything cool in a profession unless you toil away at something boring for a while first, which is kind of where all of us are at, to be honest. Anyway, here's our cool thing, which is Fantology Podcast, and let's talk about the top 3 intro books. So it's like, what's the deal? Like, Ryan, this is your idea. Someone comes to you and says, I want to read a fantasy book, and you say, okay, here you go, start with this 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, I think even more like even if they don't necessarily come to you, but like just a book you would recommend to somebody who isn't an experienced fantasy reader, who you think it's like you said earlier, not as steep of a learning curve, and just I don't know, it's easy to connect with, I guess. It's
Okay.
a great first step into the genre, and I think we can consider both science fiction and fantasy for this competition.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is a-
I think
This is interesting because I think you can go about it a couple different ways. Like one way would be recommending a book that might have light fantasy or sci-fi elements to it, but is just a good book in general. So like if you like reading, you're gonna like this regardless, and it'll like dip your toes in the fantasy. Or you could also recommend something that is like archetypically fantasy sci-fi, and the the reasoning being, if you don't like this, you're not really gonna like fantasy or sci-fi, but if you do, you will. So I'm interested to see what you guys pick on there.
I went a
Hoping it's
different
not a
route
bunch
altogether.
of YA stuff, honestly. I feel like this is beholden to that, but
Oh dang.
And
yeah, I'm
and
calling you
maybe
out, Josh.
maybe your fantasies don't align with our fantasies. Maybe your fantasies are more BDSM, and so you would recommend 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
That could be. All
I
right.
don't know
Well,
if I'd
I'm gonna
consider that
start. I'm
fantasy.
gonna
Let's-
start.
let's hear Josh's fantasy.
So I went about it a different way. I thought about three categories of people. And so it's not like 1, 2, and 3 in terms of like the best how we would typically do it. But one, so I'm going to start with like a young adult, like I guess the first fantasy book I might introduce to my kids. And that would be Harry Potter. I think that's what, I think it's a pretty easy way to get most kids. By the way, I forgot, I'm going to say I'm probably going to get canceled by everyone here. I'm going to get canceled for Harry Potter. I'm going to get canceled by fantasy fans for my next pick. My third pick might be okay. But so
It's all right. You and Ben are redundant,
Thanks.
so
so yeah, Harry Potter. I mean, like I think it was very, I know, like formative for all of us. I know all of us were big Harry Potter fans. I know it like was a big part of sparking my love for reading. I'm getting all the illustrated books as they're coming out, and so I hope that my kids are able to read those. So sorry, Jake, for the even like middle grade, not even YA.
Harry Potter is a great one where I think J.K. Rowling nailed it of like writing, like having your writing evolve with your audience. Because yeah, the first Harry Potter is like, you could definitely consider it middle grade, but by book 4 or 5, that's definitely like YA, and by the end, it's like out of YA to what is the new one called?
New adult.
New adult.
Yeah.
as a side note, and maybe a counterpoint to Jake's, do you guys think that there's a pretty big jump from book 3 to book 4 in terms of like the age? Because I was talking to my brother who was reading it with his young kids, and he was able to read the first 3 books with like his 7-year-old, but then they started the 4th book and it was just way too scary for him. So
definitely gets scarier, but I feel like 3 started to make things scarier too. I don't know. I felt like
With
the
the
jump
Dementors.
was more between 2 and 3, but there definitely was another jump.
There's
between 3
pretty
and
big
4.
jumps between two and 3, and then between 3 and 4, I'd say but even between like 4 and 5, I'd also say there's a jump between 4 and 5. Like
I was
pretty,
terrified. I was terrified of book 2. The basilisk was enough for me.
well,
But the intro of book 4 though, like Ryan was saying,
the death of
the
the
Muggle and
but I mean, there's still like kind of the lightheartedness of like the Triwizard Tournament, but then like book 5, like it's just pretty like with the mind thing that he was doing with Snape. Man, I need to do a reread of these books.
Occlumency.
Yeah, Occlumency. Like that was all pretty intense. Like Sirius dying is like really, really intense.
Mhm.
Like that's the first like main death. Like Cedric dying, like he wasn't like somebody Harry would really depend on. I don't know. I just feel like there's a big enough jump of like.
I don't know, book 4 definitely gets dark because like that intro, and then also the whole Barty Crouch and Barty Crouch Jr. thing going on.
Okay.
I don't know.
sorry,
Yeah.
I derailed us. This isn't a review of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Guys,
No,
I'm before Josh's next pick. I'm going to London in April. I'm going to the Harry Potter like studio tour outside of London.
wait,
Pretty
Nice.
how have
pretty
you-
excited for that.
when did you plan this trip, and why is this the first time we've been hearing about it?
It's just kind of been in the works. I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
There
Oh,
you
Family
go.
trip, or what's the occasion?
Yeah, family trip. Get out of the snow. Get out of the house.
Nice.
Nice, dude.
That sounds way fun.
Okay. So second,
Great pick. Great pick.
okay. Oh, thanks. You're not going to think this one's a great pick. Okay, I did not like this book very much at all. I think I gave it a 5. But the amount of people that don't read fantasy that
I
love
think
this
you're
book.
gonna steal this pick from me. I think
Oh,
I
am
know.
I?
Yeah,
I have no
Dang.
idea. I have no idea
Sorry,
what's coming.
dude.
I
I
know.
know
where
Do you want
this
to
is
take
going.
it? I don't really want it. So if you want it,
I
you
know
can
what
have
it
it.
is.
No. You've already
Yeah,
started. You can't
introed
stop.
it already.
Okay, but it is A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Oh no,
Oh.
This is
I
a
did
really
not.
good pick.
Oh, really?
I did not think this was where you were going.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, really?
Oh, this is
okay.
where I thought you were going here. It's a good
Yeah.
pick.
I
It
mean,
is.
yeah, like, look, like I didn't like it. Mackenzie didn't really like it. I know a lot of people that really, 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 really like it that don't read really any other fantasy, but really like this book. There's like a whole subgenre of books like this that you can get into, and then you might get further and further into like other high fantasy things.
I'm actually
So, yeah.
debating whether it's a good pick. Now, just thinking, does this get people into fantasy? Like, is this a segue into fantasy, or is it just this is what, like, is it more like people like reading romance, and then the people who like reading romance novels consider this fantasy as well, but that's as far as they go?
Maybe,
Oh,
but I know a lot of people
so
like just
See
aren't-
the journey there, you know, like, is this a starting point or a limit?
maybe, but I also know a lot of people just see a big book, and they're like, "There's no way reading that is enjoyable," and then
Yeah.
they like read it, and then they're like, "Oh, dang, big books can be enjoyable." Like for a lot of people, it's just kind of that simple.
I think for a lot of the people who you might recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses to, they're not going to get into fantasy anyway, so this might be their best shot at it.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
I gave this book to my sister that doesn't really read fantasy for Christmas. I don't think she started it yet, so TBD on how
Does
that's
she
a
going.
know that
risky
there's
gift.
like? Does she know that there's like content in this book?
I kind of prefaced it a little bit, but
Okay.
you guys said it wasn't that bad. So
I don't think there's much in the first one at all.
There's not a ton in the first one, but
Josh liked
I-
it enough to go on and read the second and third one. Did you read the third one?
I don't know if I even finished the second one, to be honest. No, I think I did finish.
I can get past like the first few chapters of the second one. I might have to retry that.
Okay. Well, yeah. So second pick, third pick, it's like a general audience. Like if a work friend comes up that like I don't know super well, it's like, hey, I heard that you like reading books. What's a fantasy book that you'd recommend? And I think just Mistborn. Like I think it's a pretty digestible read. It's very,
Yeah.
it has a lot of current trends in fantasy. It's nothing too intense. It's pretty chill. Not too much like in terms of like content or violence or sex or anything like that. I know it's not like an offensive book. And it's still one of my like favorite completed trilogies. It's done. You can stop after book 3 and be satisfied with it. So yeah.
I mean, heck, you could stop after book 1 and have a satisfying story.
True.
Josh.
All right.
That's what my wife did. She read the first book and stopped. And she
I thought
liked
she
it
was-
too.
I thought she was really into the romance side of things.
She was.
And then she found A Court of Thorns and Roses.
tell her book 2 has like a Reese and I don't even remember their names. Dang it.
Fair.
What are the two guys' names though?
It's
Like
Rhysand
and
and
Lionel from Breath of the Wild. I don't know.
You're talking about Jacob and Edward?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, surprisingly, no hot takes here. No,
Really?
like, yeah, I think these are all like Very
Okay.
good picks. Yeah.
All right. All right.
You guys are not going to argue about this?
I don't feel like the internet is going to agree with me or our Discord is going to agree with me, but hey, I'm glad Jake agrees with me.
All right, so Josh, you said Harry Potter, Court of
Court of-
Thorns and Roses, and
Mistborn.
Mistborn.
Mistborn. Okay.
It's just I bring that up just because recently a coworker of mine, like I was telling him about our podcast, and he was listening to an episode, and he picked the Lost Metal episode, and Josh and I have a little argument about what a MacGuffin is in that episode, and I had totally forgotten, and he's just like, "You guys are really passionate about MacGuffins," and I was like, I don't remember. I was like, I don't remember much. I just remember Josh had a hot take and it was wrong. That's all I remember.
It's all right. It's common for me. It's common. So I probably don't stand by half my hot takes. And
it's fun to discuss them though. For sure.
No, you have to have hot takes to make a good podcast episode, even if you don't really believe in them.
All right. Okay, there's mine. I'm done. I got through mine.
All right, Ryan or Jake, or I mean, am I gonna
I
go?
can go.
Usually I go last. Okay, Jake.
I can go. So I feel like I'm not picking Aragon, but I feel like Aragon would be a common pick for this. I didn't have the experience of reading that growing up. I didn't read it until college, so it wasn't part of my like formative years, but I do think that like the dragon rider aspect of fantasy can be a really good intro to fantasy. And for me, that was Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. Love those books. They're fun. Go ahead.
Is that the same series that Sanderson really liked growing up?
Yeah.
Or is that a different one? Okay.
He's referenced them before. Yeah. They're a really cool blend of like science fiction and fantasy. Like the more you read, the more you realize it's really kind of a science fiction setting with more of a fantasy like archetype. Yeah, really great. You have basically dragons and people who like become dragon riders. They bond with them, and there's like more of a like larger world building that you get to know as things go on. Anyways, I really like those. I would love for us to read them all and review them, see if they hold up. TBD.
Aren't there a ton? There's a lot, right?
There's like 5 or 7, I think. Yeah, maybe more.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay.
Wait,
Not-
Dragon Riders of Pern?
Yeah,
I thought there were more than that.
there might be. That's my recollection. I don't even know if I read them all.
I'd be down to go back and at least read like the first one.
Yeah. Number 2, I thought of what's it called? Dang, I just had it. The Lies of Locke Lamora. This is one of those where it's like not super it's not super fantasy. I feel like you could not really be interested in fantasy tropes, but you could read that one and then realize like fantasy is more than the stereotypes. And it's just a really
good,
really well written and like really fun and engaging. And then as it goes on, it gets more kind of fantasy like. And so you can get more into that and kind of get a feel for if this is something you want to explore more or not.
And I feel like it has a lot of aspects that, might appeal to somebody who's unfamiliar with fantasy, with like, the strong relationships between the characters, the humor, the high settings. I think it's also got a little bit of coming of age aspect to it.
Yeah.
So I like that pick.
I think anyone who likes reading would enjoy that book. So, and then my final one is kind of cliche, but I'm going to say The Hobbit. I feel like this is kind of on the opposite end. This is archetypical fantasy. So if you read this and you like it, you're probably going to like most fantasy stuff out there. So, and go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say I was almost to pick The Hobbit instead of Harry Potter because that's like a memory I have from when I was little, probably around like 5 or 6 was my dad reading The Hobbit to us. And like,
Yeah.
I felt like I was like a reader, like, cause it felt like an adult book kind of,
Yeah.
but it still was like
yeah.
very understandable and digestible for a kid. And so yeah, anyway, good pick.
That's similar
That's it.
to the Harry Potter pick. You're talking about you're getting the illustrated versions. We just bought an illustrated version of it to read to our kid. So
Nice.
hopefully they like it.
Nice. That's a good example of a YA book that's not like silly, childish writing. It's still like adult writing, but for
Well,
kids
yeah.
almost. If that makes any sense. Yeah, it's not this like watered down, silly thing just for kids.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, you or me?
Currently I am trying to break up a cat fight. So if you want to go next, Steven.
You look so calm,
Okay.
Ryan.
Okay, I will go. Well, Ryan breaks up a cat fight. So I approached this from a little bit different angle. I was more thinking like I'm recommending a book to someone who knows what fantasy is, familiar with Lord of the Rings, grew up with Harry Potter, probably has that background, but then they're like, hey, I want to get more into modern fantasy, or like what's kind of the next step in reading fantasy books. Because those are the conversations I like to have. I feel like recommending someone to read like basic fantasy is not as exciting as like, okay, here's something that's a little more involved. Anyway, not to diss on your guys' picks or anything, but that's just where my mind went.
Let's
So
see Superior Stevens picks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a little higher level picks here for you. So the first pick, which will probably be a surprise to no one, is The Name of the Wind, which is my favorite book. And I know you're gonna say, oh, the trilogy's not complete. And honestly, maybe it will never be complete. We don't know what's going on.
Don't put that out
But
there.
yeah, well, at this point, Jake, I think we have to be realistic about things, as Logan Ninefingers would say. Who does not? Logan does not make
Dang,
my
with the
list
foreshadow from Steven.
Yeah, no, Grimdark doesn't. I don't think makes the list of recommendations. Although I do have an anecdote about a recent recommendation I gave. Anyway, Name of the Wind. Name of the Wind makes it because I feel like the writing's awesome, and it's kind of like you were saying, Jake, with Lies of Locke Lamora. Like, for the most part, it's kind of it's not super involved in magical flying creatures and anything that's too far out there. Like, yes, there is magic, but it seems very realistic, and it's kind of just this coming of age story about a boy who goes on an adventure. And I don't think you really need to be too into the fantasy genre to appreciate it. So I feel like this is a pretty safe pick, and I've recommended this book to a lot of people who are not big fantasy fans, and they've, for the most part, all liked it. And if they haven't liked it, then they haven't told me about it later. So everyone that comes back to me has liked it.
Yeah, I had the same thought that similarly, it's just a really well-written book. And so like the story is written in just a compelling way that the fantasy elements aren't too heavy in like the genre aspect of it. It almost feels more like you're reading some sort of like fairy tale in that sense, where it's like, okay, this is kind of like you have these boogeyman type creatures, and like it's a good blend of like that in a coming of age like Harry Potter, and then just really good writing. I almost picked that one instead of Lies of Locke Lamora, but I knew you were going to pick it, so I had to swap.
I feel like it's hard not to get pulled in by the writing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So I
well
gave
written.
my sister that I gave a Court of Thorns and Roses to for Christmas. I gave her husband The Name of the Wind. I've on this thing where I give my family, like everyone in my family, a book, and I hope that they read it. But honestly, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do it for, because there's just a lot of pressure giving someone a book. Like if they don't read it, it could be kind of awkward. I don't know.
How many of them have actually read the books you've gifted them?
My other sister, her husband, Caden, who's been on the podcast with us, always does. He's a top tier brother-in-law in this regard.
Whoa.
So
So are you banking on both brothers-in-law not listening to this, Or
Caden's the only one that might listen to it. So
Or do you not care?
No, Caden probably will listen. He listens to
No,
a
Caden
lot of
will.
our.
But the one that has been designated as not top tier.
No, he's not. It's not that he's not top tier.
That's
He
what
just-
I heard.
He has an opportunity. He has an
Oh.
opportunity here to get to that top tier because he's new.
Listen closely.
He's a new brother-in-law. So, this is his chance to get there. We'll see how it goes. No pressure.
Steven,
was
if,
then
if they don't
Sulker.
if they don't read the book by the following Christmas, you should just like re-gift it. Be like, hey, your present is from brother-in-law B because he didn't read it. Like he's giving you his book because he loses
just take
book
their-
privileges.
Yeah, just take their book and give it to Caden.
That is way too much passive aggressive behavior for Christmas.
I feel like it would be very difficult to figure out like a good book to recommend to each member of your family and not run
It
out
is.
of them after like
It really
2 or
is,
3
Ryan.
years.
Yeah, it really is. I have the hardest time for my mom and my sisters. I just
Then
am
again, if
not as familiar with the Regency romance genre.
If somebody likes Wheel of Time, then you got the next like 15 years just taken care of. Don't even need to think about it.
Yeah.
Or just,
Anyway,
or just
okay.
for their wedding gift, just dump all of their 15 Wheel of Time books in there.
That'd be a nice wedding gift.
Oh, that's what we got, Jake. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is what you got, Jake.
Yeah.
First wedding.
Yeah, it was a really
Nice.
nice wedding gift.
Okay, so that's one book. I've been able to get one book down at this point.
Nice. Okay. Sorry.
Book number 2. So I'm going to choose a really recent book, which came out last year and is Babel by R.F. Kuang. And this was actually the top, it's like the top fantasy book of 2022 on a lot of lists, and Jake is showing it off. And it's kind of like, I don't think it's too dissimilar from something like Name of the Wind, where it's a coming of age. It's kind of a school setting for the majority of the time, but it has a much more like serious adult tone because it really leans in hard to real world themes and is important in that way and makes you think about our modern world. Not that Name of the Wind doesn't have good themes, but Babel really kind of leans into some more political ideas almost. But I think that's great. And I think it's awesome when fantasy can touch on actual real things and can get you thinking along those lines as well. It's also a fantastically written book, and it doesn't require you to read any other books. It's a standalone. And yeah, you guys have read it, right? Like, am I crazy
read
here
it.
for choosing? Oh, okay. It's just there to inspire you.
Yes, it is actually. It was right next to Children of Gods and Fighting Men, which I did read, and I haven't made it onto Babel yet.
I think the only thing you have to be careful is the political nature of the book. You gotta
Yeah.
be mindful of who you're giving that to.
Let's just say far right wing may not appreciate it as much. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah.
Wow, you guys really want to get controversial today.
No. It's just if we're talking about like recommending books to people, I'm not saying that like they can't read it, but like I just don't think somebody like people with
Yeah.
a specific worldview would really enjoy reading it. So I probably wouldn't recommend it to them.
Got to be open-minded. Okay, book number 3. As the controversy continues for my
Oh
recommendations.
boy.
Now I'm looking
Oof.
through my books that I've written down. I'm trying to find another controversial one. I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna kind of continue the trend of coming of age type stories, school settings even, and I might be stealing one from Ryan, but I'm gonna go with Blood Song by Anthony Ryan. Was that on your list,
Ooh.
Ryan?
It actually wasn't, just because of how I've talked about this a lot in recent podcasts, but how the series ends, the trilogy, or at least the first trilogy ends on kind of a low note for me. But Blood Song on its own, I guess, would be a
So good.
fantastic recommendation.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think we all are kind of disappointed by the ending of the trilogy.
I
But
never finished it because you guys were so disappointed in it, and I didn't want to have that disappointment.
It's
Yeah.
definitely worth finishing, in my
Oh,
opinion.
is it? Okay.
Yeah, it definitely is.
honestly, I don't know if I can say the same. But the first book, Bloodsong, goes on my list of books to recommend to new readers because it's just super fun and fast paced and enjoyable to get inside Valen Alsorna's head and all the cool things that he does. And yeah, I guess the theme in my books is if I'm going to recommend a book to a new reader, it's going to be a fun coming of age type book. Although Babel, not quite the same level of like lighthearted fun, but still really good.
So, Stephen, no, it's kind of funny. Back in 2010, so 13 years ago now, guess what books you
Oof.
recommended for me to read after I'd kind of burnt. I think I'd read 6 Wheel of Time books and was a little bit burnt out.
Okay, you remember this?
Yeah. Guess what they
Wow.
were?
Okay.
The Name of the
Was
Wind?
Name of the Wind and Bloodsong were on there?
Name of the Wind and Bloodsong.
Dang. Hey, I've
Really?
evolved a little bit. I've evolved a
2010.
little bit.
He recommended Bloodsong to you? I thought I recommended it to everyone.
It was. I think it was both of you.
Does-
I think both of you.
I do
recommended
think
it.
Ryan discovered that one.
Yeah,
When did
maybe
it-
it was. Yeah, it was definitely both of you.
Yeah, I think I read it after all you guys had, so I'm not sure when and who recommended it.
Oh wait, no. So okay, it was published July 2011. Maybe this was. Yeah, so it wasn't 2010.
Close enough.
I didn't
Yeah,
read
maybe-
Bloodsong until probably 2013.
Yeah, maybe this was.
2012, because I read it before Tower Lord came out.
Yeah. Never mind. You're right. This was when I got home. Okay. Yeah. Either way, it was after a long break from reading, and you recommended after first getting burnt out of Wheel of Time, Name of the Wind, and then after another long break, Bloodsong. So been going for solid these recommendations for a long time, Stephen.
Hey, Babel is new. There's no way I recommended Babel to you back in 2013 or 2010.
You might have been like, one day, Josh, there's going to be this book comes out. Rebecca Kwong. She's in high school right now, but
I really like coming of age school stories, which is why I'm really enjoying James Eilington's new book, The Will of the Many, which we have an arc for that you should definitely be excited for. Maybe one day I will recommend that as when we do this episode again in 5 years, that will be on my list.
Did you ever read Wizard of Earthsea?
Yes.
Did you like, because that's one that one heavily inspired Name of the Wind, and is also a coming of age magic student.
I liked it okay. It was just a little bit shorter and didn't quite have the same, like it wasn't as fun for me.
Yeah, I feel like the character and that wasn't as like sympathetic, isn't like, I don't know, you didn't like him as much.
Right, exactly. But I could see why, like it felt like a foundational fantasy book written back in like what, the 60s ish time period.
Something
Yeah,
like
it felt like something that inspired something that I enjoy more. We can just leave it at that before I get even more controversial.
that.
Okay, Ryan, your turn.
All right. I am surprised. Some of these picks are still, we're not in your guys' top 3. I'm going to start off with my number 3 pick, which is Ender's Game. And
Great
I
one.
think there's a good reason this has been made into a movie adaptation, and I feel like it's one of the first fantasy books. I remember not reading it myself, but like reading, somebody else was reading it like on a long road trip and just talking about, the beginning with Ender and the buggers. And then I think it's one of the books that I have read in one day just because of how engrossing it is. And how interesting. And I think Steven and I have similar tastes in books. I also really like coming of age books in school settings, and this is kind of, I mean, yeah, I guess I would consider it that.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's
Military school.
funny. It's funny that I would recommend this book because I read the next book, Speaker for the Dead, but I didn't really like it that much because of the philosophy. And I read Ender's Shadow, which I would also recommend. If you like Ender's Game, I would definitely recommend Ender's Shadow. But I just haven't really gone into the series much past those. But I think these are like such quintessential, I guess they're science fiction, not fantasy. They're such quintessential books in the genre that, or I guess Ender's Game specifically, it would be, you know, hard not to recommend it to somebody who's at all interested, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think about Ender's Game?
Yeah, that was on my short list as well. I really like it because, like you said, you can either go like keep personal stories and go like Ender's Shadow, or you can go like into like larger, more like sci-fi heavy books like a Speaker, and you know you can kind of go branch off into either of those depending on your interests. So I think that's a great pick.
Yeah. My number 2 pick would be The Fitz and the Fool, which, surprise, surprise, another coming of age book. I think this is
Nice.
It's it's very different from Ender's Game in the sense that it is, I think, very much fantasy. I don't know. I mean, I guess now that I think about it, I can see a lot of similarities with the protagonists, with both Fitz and Ender. They're both like, I think, very like thoughtful. But I guess maybe in the later books, but Fitz and the Fool, I think there's a lot of like mental health that isn't like directly talked about, but I think that, you know, Fitz has a lot of struggles with, you know, various mental health issues that I think I could see in myself at different times in my life. And so it was easy for me to put myself in Fitz's shoes and in the story. And especially in later books with his relationship with like specifically the Fool. And I think how that relationship like transcends so many other relationships in fantasy that almost seem like shallow by comparison.
So Assassin's Apprentice is the book.
Yeah,
like that you would start with. Yeah.
Yep. Assassin's Apprentice is the book. And I guess the greater series is called The Realm of the Elderlings, or maybe that's the first trilogy.
No, you're right. The whole like world is the Realm of the Elderlings.
Okay.
Yeah. Which includes one side trilogy and one side quartet, whatever you call the series of 4 books.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said though. Like anytime that I can take a character and really put myself in their shoes and identify with them over like something really deep, especially when there's something that's going wrong in their life, that really helps connect me to the series.
Yeah. I don't think Jake and Josh, have you guys read Fitz and the Fool?
No.
I've read the first trilogy and liked it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to my number 1 pick, which is the book that I thought Josh was going to steal from me, but he didn't.
So
And
one
that is
Josh rates as 5 out of 10.
Yeah. The one that he said was Court of Thorns and Roses. And that's because I totally disagree with Josh's opinion on this series.
Is it Red Rising?
It is Red Rising. I think that it is just like modern science fiction done so well. It's so interesting. I love the premise of the story. Which, what do you know? I guess this isn't quite the same. No, it is a coming of age book. What am I talking about? All of these are
Definitely.
Coming of
coming
age,
of age books.
military school. It's all
Yeah. And so it has a lot of similarities with Ender's Game now too. I'm realizing now that Steven says
First book for sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the first book.
It's got a good romance for you as well, Ryan. Yeah, it checks all the
It-
Ryan boxes.
Yeah, like what else could you need? And I think that it's not it doesn't have a steep learning curve. It just grabs you and pulls you in. I'm rereading it right now and I love it. And I still don't understand why Josh didn't like it, but there you go.
So you're rereading in preparation for Lightbringer book 6?
Yeah. So I've only read the first 3 books, or the first trilogy of Red Rising, and then I did not read books 4 and 5, which are
Iron Gold
Gold
and Dark Age.
and Dark Age. I actually think
Same.
Jake was the first one out of all of us to read Red Rising.
I don't remember who recommended it to me. It might have been. It was definitely in my like Overdrive 3M library Libby days in college, where it might have been.
Why are you acting like those days are past you, Jake? Those are like,
Well, no, they're back recently. Emily was like, "Why are we paying for Audible? We can check everything out from the library." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Because you don't."
That's a good
own
point.
it."
you
Those
don't
are
own it
books
on
that you-
Audible either, man.
In college though, you're like, I remember thinking, man, I can't wait till when I don't have to like put this book on hold and I can actually buy it. Like I thought I had arrived when I got like an actual Audible subscription, and now we're back to the library. Anyways,
There are definitely books that I want to own.
Yeah.
And Red Rising, I own the first trilogy, and I don't regret that because it's a series that I'm gonna read with my kids.
I think Lisa recommended it to me. Maybe. I don't
Steven,
know.
that face was great. Who's Lisa? That face was
It's a
priceless.
it's a person that I haven't thought about in years.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Same.
Very, very cryptic.
I'm
It's just-
surprised
Well,
Josh
it's just-
didn't
it's
have a
just-
single comment that whole time.
I mean, like
I was
I know you
baiting
guys,
him too.
I know.
I think
I was like,
He just doesn't want to open up a big
I
can
was
of
like,
worms.
I've gone a whole podcast without you guys getting mad at me for some hot take.
I'm
even
not
though
gonna
the
get
rest-
mad at you.
The rest of the internet's
I'm
gonna
not
get
gonna
mad at
get
me
mad
for
at you.
recommending Harry Potter.
Oh,
so-
Josh.
Well, all I know is we ticked off the like online left with Harry Potter, and we ticked off the online right with Babel. So we're good. Covering all the
So
bases.
everyone hates us.
I also
Yeah.
probably ticked off the left with
Left.
Ender's Game too.
Oh yeah, left with Ender's Game too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Hmm. Is there any way we can get the center upset at us?
Hard to do.
I mean, at that point, you're just like recommending like Mein Kampf or something that like is blatantly bad.
It's true.
All right. Well, hopefully there's some open-minded people listening to the podcast. We haven't been totally canceled.
Josh, why don't you like Red Rising again?
I don't know, man. I'll have to go back and listen to the podcast. I just remember.
He forgot his
Okay.
opinion, so he's got to
No.
listen to himself.
I mean,
It's
I
kind of
mean,
the
that's
same
valid.
idea with the MacGuffin.
Okay.
I don't remember
Oh.
why. I just know I didn't like it, and I was right.
I think that's valid.
Wait,
You can
wait,
remember like
Yeah.
the
I can pull up
emotions.
some general things. I feel like it was just very tropey. I felt like it just kind of went
I
down
remember
like very
this.
kind of predictable like plot points. I thought that the character wasn't super well developed, and the parts he was
Fake out.
developed in, I didn't.
Were
really
there some
like.
fake out deaths?
I mean, there probably were some. I don't know. That was early enough on my like reading resurgence that fake out deaths probably didn't bother me as much then. But maybe if I go read it, I'll be upset about a fake out death. I don't know. Anyway, those are my kind of general feelings. I don't know. I would have to go listen.
No,
to
I
the
remember it.
outtakes
I
again.
remember now.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of Josh's hot take, I think it's a good pick, Ryan, because it's really accessible to a lot of people. Like coming out of, if you're someone who's coming out of like YA fantasy, you could pretty naturally get into Red Rising because it moves super fast paced. And it does, I mean, sure, it does have a lot of the tropes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It can make it really accessible to people who just want something, fast and enjoyable and exciting.
Yeah. Good pick.
Totally agree.
Any other like plus ones from you guys that need to be said that no one picked?
Books of Babel.
Well, books of
Those are good.
Senlin Ascends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are accessible, pretty easy to start with.
I was also going to throw out His Dark Materials is kind of a good one.
I'd
Yeah.
say Bartimaeus trilogy. I think that's another like YA book that doesn't really.
I thought you were gonna do
Right.
that, Jake.
Yeah, I thought the other ones were better picks as intros to fantasy, but I really like those. I think they're like that rare instance of it's like definitely YA, but it's not written down. Where I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm writing to a YA audience, so I'm like dumbing down my writing and my themes, whereas that one doesn't at all, and you get like a really great character arc and progression, and it's really good.
One Dresden Files. I remember, Stephen, that was another one
Good
that
one.
you got me on when I was kind of in a reading slump.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. And then there
Was it
another
me?
like
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was. There's like another 3 or 4 year slump between when I finished that and when the next one came out.
Yeah,
I was looking at
it was bad timing.
Yeah, it's very bad timing. I burned through those in like maybe 8 or 9 weeks. I read them really fast.
Dang.
Yeah.
I was looking at a list online. They had the first law on there, or they had the blade itself on there. And while I love that book, I don't know if I'd recommend that as an intro to fantasy itself. I don't know.
I recommended that one to my brother-in-law. He had I think I'm actually the one that got him into Game of Thrones. Hayden, if you're listening, let me know. But I think I remember him saying that my Game of Thrones recommendation. Like so he had read like A Song of Ice and Fire and loved those books. And so I was like, hey, if you like love A Song of Ice and Fire, you should read this trilogy.
Yeah.
And he got really into those as well. So
Yeah,
I think that's a good one for kind of like a
I think
second
it's
stage recommend.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's, especially if you like Game of Thrones, like that's a great pick. But if it's like, I don't know, it really depends. Like some people are like, hey, I want to get into fantasy, and then it like you can recommend those like different tiered books. But if it's like you're trying to convince someone to get into fantasy, I don't know if that'd be a good pick.
One I'm kind of surprised nobody even brought up was Eye of the World. I think that's like that could be in that's like a pretty solid like book that's like
it's just hard. It's hard to say it's going to be a recommendation because there are so many books following that it's like, I don't know.
I thought about this, and it is a really good recommendation. And I think 10-15 years ago, people didn't care as much that it's part of a long series. It'd be like, hey, here's a good book, you should read it, and then you just would keep reading the series. But nowadays I think a lot of people are like, well, how many books is it? You know,
I know everyone says that. Is it just because no one has an attention span anymore?
I don't know. It's like, if it's good, just keep reading it, be entertained.
No, I mean, it's a commitment though. And also
Well,
like
you're gonna be
monetary. Like not everybody knows about Libby or uses it. Like, so it's a lot of money if you're gonna be buying all the books too.
If you're listening, use Libby.
Yeah,
it's only valid if you're like, I only have a year left to live, and so you have to like option out your time.
It's the only valid reason not to read The Wheel of
Well,
Time.
it's the only valid reason to be like, how many books are there in this particular series?
I don't know. Honestly, that's kind of one of the things that's held me back from continuing on with Realm of the Elderlings. Is it just seems kind of daunting. Like there's so many more books left to read in it, and
that's fair. There are a lot,
and I have like other things I want to read, and I tend to get sucked into things. Anyway,
all right, that's a wrap. Before Ryan's cats completely kill each other. Thanks for listening. Yeah, thanks for listening. And if you want to participate in the upcoming March Twitter bracket challenge, where you, the listener, yes, you right there at home, can participate. So I will send out a Twitter message. You can follow us at Fantology_books on Twitter. And you can just reply to that or DM us or, whatever. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with us. Let us know what your top 3 books are, intro to fantasy books or science fiction books, really. And then over the course of the month of March, we will do a bunch of Twitter bracket competitions where the people out in the world out on the internet can vote. And eventually we will have an ultimate winner. And there will be bragging rights on the line. So there you go.
Just to make everybody really mad, is this the first one we've done since Elon Musk took over Twitter? Did we do one in December?
We did one in December. The last one we did was December. Yes.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. I'm wrong. Couldn't get one last jab in there.
Yep. Awesome. And if you want to chat with us more, you can always do that on Discord. Invites to our Discord server are on the episode description. And you can just kind of join and chat about whatever. And it's a good time there. All right, guys. See you later.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.